Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. We got a beautiful day, so I'm pretty excited about that. We've got a great topic with FedRAMP. I'm going to bring in Zyad in a minute here. I want to welcome you to the federal sales training. In a minute, usually I share slides, and I'm not going to do that because I really actually want to maximize the time talking about FedRAMP. But I do want to just do a couple of promotional activities for you, or housekeeping activities. One is this is your community and your network. So as we're here to talk about FedRAMP, learn a little bit more about FedRAMP, you do have a whole community of people in the chat. There's folks who are here live. There's folks here who will watch the replay, including federal buyers. And so engage in the chat. Put your core competency and company name in there. 2 or 3 words about your core competency is sufficient. It really helps me begin to try to remember who you are, right? So the more you put into the chat, the harder it is for me to remember. For me, I'll look at the chat afterwards and engage you. But right now, for your fellow attendees here, just say hello. The other thing is you can say where you're coming from. The reason I picked today's topic on FedRAMP, partly because I found a FedRAMP expert, but more because I've been wondering about FedRAMP for years, and I've just never really been in that space. It's more of a thing that came after I sold my last company, and so I'm less familiar with it. But I do understand the importance of FedRAMP as it fits in. It's not for everybody, but it is for some of us, and I'm going to find out from Zyad today who's it for. That'll be one of my questions, asking him. The other thing is, if you've got questions about FedRAMP, I'm not doing chat, but put it into the chat. Ask questions in there, because even if I can't get to them here in today's discussion, Zyad can come back and answer it, or you can go offline and connect with him and DataLock's the company he's running over there, and they'll answer those questions. So let's go ahead and get started. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonnell. I am the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. I'm co-founder of GovCon in a Box, and I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. Today's success is a little bit more technical than pure sales, but it still fits into that world of how do I do business with the government. And this is kind of one hurdle that you sometimes have to go through, FedRAMP, as we'll find out. I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business owner, and ever since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret, it's just a process. When we follow a process A to Z, we have repeatable, predictable results, and that's what I want for you. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to my newsletter. That's how you hear about these trainings, how you hear about great content we put out, etc. Today, I put out a notice. I don't know if you saw it, a newsletter article and a post, but it was talking about how I have 32,000 plus connections, and I want you to be able to meet them. So if you're open to connecting, put that into the comments of that post. Well, already hundreds and hundreds of people are kind of engaging. So make sure you get over there and check it out. Subscribe to the newsletter. And then also, I just want to thank the over 100 people who signed up for today's training. We didn't give you a lot of notice, right? I think we posted it on Saturday or Sunday, and now you're here. And it's good. We got a great topic in front of us. And so let me go ahead and dive in. Oh, by the way, I usually congratulate the 100 Club companies. These are companies that have achieved a 100 score in visibility on GovCon in a Box. You can check out GovCon in a Box. You can even find who those companies are there. But I'll do a bigger shout out as post tomorrow. Yes, Saturday. And then also on Monday, I'll catch up and make sure I'm highlighting yesterday's, today's, and anybody over the weekend out there. But make sure you make your company's visibility is at 100%. Okay, so I want to bring on Zyad. Let me just do it. Hey, and I did it right this time. Usually when I bring on a guest, Zyad, I put you into the corner, and then I have to bring you up. But I appreciate you coming here, and I want to give you a chance to just introduce yourself actually in your company. But as you introduce yourself and your company to the group, do me a favor and just let us know, since you're a government contractor as well as these folks. So you're not just an instructor for us today, but you're also in this business like the rest of us. Just let us know, how'd you get into government contracting? It's kind of a nice way to understand who you guys are.
Absolutely. So first of all, Neil, thanks for having me. I definitely appreciate that. Definitely looking forward to talking about all things FedRAMP with you and your audience as well. So as Neil mentioned, my name is Zyad Nabbus. I am the CEO of DataLock Consulting Group. We are a cybersecurity services firm. We do security operations. We do cybersecurity audits. We specialize in vulnerability management, and we do have a cloud security practice, which is why we've become a FedRAMP 3PAO. Now, Neil, you asked how I got into the space. So I've actually worked for government contracting firms my entire career. And so at the last one that I was at, I found that a lot of the customers would ask for me and a couple of team members that were on my team by name to come back and do the work. And so it just became a natural fit for us to kind of, move off and kind of do our own thing. We knew that there was some good services that we were providing and customers were happy. So we wanted to make sure that we kept that going for them.
That's funny. I kind of have a little similar story. I was doing network engineering when I came out of the Army, and I worked for GDIT for 6 months. So this huge $1 billion firm for the customer, just like me and what we were doing. I was like, well, what if I started my own company? Would you still work with me? And it was, you get lucky if you have a customer who likes you because of what you're good at.
Yep.
So I'm glad you're good at cybersecurity, because that's what we're going to talk about, I think, to a degree, but more specifically, FedRAMP. So FedRAMP's an interesting thing. And it was funny, folks, I was talking with Zyad ahead of time saying, I'm going to ask about FedRAMP. And he said, sure. So we have an hour to answer that particular question first, right? I was like, well, no, we got 1 to 2 minutes to do that. And so any question we ask, this is fast paced. We got 30 minutes, probably 25 now. But Zyad, let's just start with that, right? What is FedRAMP from a very high level, and why maybe is it important to the government?
I'll try to give a very high level answer here, but I do have to go a little bit back in history so that everybody understands why FedRAMP even exists in the first place. So in the early 2000s, there was a law that was signed. It was called FISMA, Federal Information Security Management Act, that required federal agencies to protect government data and government operations, right? And so NIST came along, created some security controls, provided a lot of guidance. A lot of NIST 800 series documentation is based on cybersecurity, and a lot of that guidance has to be implemented at federal agencies and for those that are undergoing FedRAMP as well. And so FedRAMP really evolved from that to be applied to cloud systems. The federal government wants to hand over some sensitive data or have their sensitive data being processed, stored, and transmitted with a cloud service provider. They want to make sure that that data has been secured, that they're meeting the appropriate regulation, the laws, and the security standards that they would be implementing on their own systems. So that's why FedRAMP exists, and it gives CSPs the ability to create a security package one time, go under an assessment one time, and then have all of those artifacts reused by multiple agencies.
Okay, that's the why. Right. That's funny. What's CSPs, by the way?
Cloud service providers.
Okay. So let's continue this what is FedRAMP question, because even for me, and I got to tell you, by the way, it would be really interesting to see how well you can answer this. Not how well, I'm sure you'll answer it well, but how much I'll understand what you're saying, because I look on FedRAMP's site itself and I try to figure this out. I'm like, so is it just for cloud service providers? So just for AWS and Microsoft, or is it for a broader group of people? Who should care about FedRAMP from a perspective of going through the process?
Right. So there are definitions for what a cloud is, right? And the different types of offerings and services, right? But for the most part, if you are providing a cloud-based service, whether it be an infrastructure as a service, like an AWS, or a platform as a service, think ServiceNow, or application as a service, right? It's really important that you're securing that technology stack when doing business with the customer. So really, it's for anybody who's going to be doing business with the government that is trying to sell them their cloud solution. And for the most part, for a lot of organizations, it's going to be the application as a service. There are some organizations that do provide the infrastructure, and if that's what you do, you can go through FedRAMP as well. But a lot of what's on the FedRAMP Marketplace are software as a service and applications.
Yeah, we're going to come back to that FedRAMP Marketplace in a minute. I got to put my things aside. So let me keep digging a little bit more, because I was following what you were saying there. And if I just push it back, AWS is like infrastructure as a service, right? And then for everybody else, if you're not tracking, you got applications on top of a infrastructure, which is basically a computer.
Exactly.
But what about application to me as a service could be Microsoft 365 or something. It's not an infrastructure, it's a platform. But what about people who are building solutions on top of, let's say, in an AWS environment? Do they need to go through a FedRAMP process? Do they get to, piggyback and borrow the FedRAMP approval from AWS?
That's a great question. And that really comes down to the shared responsibility model, right? So, AWS is going to be responsible for a certain part of the technology stack, right? And then you're responsible for your part of the technology stack. So, for instance, AWS might secure the infrastructure, but you're the one in control of the operating system that's being installed on the infrastructure, right? You're the one who's responsible for the application. So if you build an application that doesn't meet the requirements, that was insecurely built, you're not going to be able to go through that FedRAMP process. So really, you have to own certain parts of the technology stack, and there are requirements for you to undergo an assessment for your responsibilities and what's in your purview.
Okay, I'm going to come actually push that forward because I know there's roles, everybody, or responsibilities that are out there, or who's engaged in this. But one more question, just digging in, and you tell me if I go too far. I feel like I'm asking selfishly, right? So if I'm following you, as long as AWS or Microsoft Azure or whatever, they're approved, then I'm approved without building anything so far. And then if I've got something else and I start building it, I've got to watch that. So there's all these AI solutions that are coming out, and it's this whole idea is this like FISMA approved or FedRAMP approved, et cetera. Do solutions like if you think about an AI solution that might, I'm trying to think of one, but I don't know how familiar you are on this, but like if you've got a large language model, you're training, but basically to me, it's just a database and presentation layer with a little business in between. That kind of solution, will those also be required to go through a FedRAMP process? Just they won't have to worry about this part, but would they still have to be approved?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, whatever they're responsible for, they still have to make sure that they're securing, that they're building in a secure manner, and that they're meeting the specific controls. And on top of that, there are continuous monitoring requirements. It's one thing to secure your system, but they don't want you to just do it up front, right? It's something you continuously have to do. You continuously have to monitor for threats, for vulnerabilities. You have to patch. There's a lot of things that you have to do. So anybody who wants to sell to the federal government has to make sure that they are securing their responsibilities.
Okay. Yeah. And so let's go into the marketplace for just level setting this for everybody. If you go to FedRAMP, do you know what the website is?
FedRAMP.gov.
Is it really? Okay.
Yeah.
I asked somebody the other day about CIBR. You know what the website is? Yes, CIBR.gov. So if you go to FedRAMP.gov, you will learn what FedRAMP folks want to tell you. And they're going through some transitions, which is great. You can learn about that. But it has these three sections, I think or three groups. So you have a marketplace, you have the auditors or something else. And I don't know what the third one is. Is the third one the people who want to get approved?
So for FedRAMP, there's really two main paths to FedRAMP. And I think this is really important for anybody listening in who is either currently working with a federal organization or wants to eventually take their solution to the government. There's really two paths that you can go, right? You have your FedRAMP Ready path, right? Which basically means you've built everything to spec, you meet all the requirements, you've undergone an audit that is a subset of controls, and you've proven that you are ready to go through FedRAMP, right? That puts you as a designation of FedRAMP Ready. That really allows your organization and your sales team to go out to government agencies and say, hey, we're almost there. We need to partner with you to get us the rest of the way. Because it's really important to understand that in order to get on that FedRAMP Marketplace, you got to get a federal agency to partner with you, to authorize you, and to let FedRAMP know that they will be using your product and that they've given you an authority to operate. Right. The second way that you end up getting on the FedRAMP Marketplace is when you are partnered with an agency and you're already at that point, the agency, without you going through FedRAMP Ready, could come and tell you, hey, we want you to be FedRAMP authorized. Start going down that path. And so you get a different designation, your FedRAMP in process, et cetera.
So on the, it was an interesting thing you said there about being FedRAMP ready and then going and basically finding a sponsor, right? Some federal agency person who's going to help you get to FedRAMP and go through the process with FedRAMP. So that's a mandatory thing, right? Is to have an agency. Before I get into the agency part and ask about this, just really quick, FedRAMP ready. Can I just make myself FedRAMP ready? Do I need to go through a designated group of people to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you need to undergo an audit with a FedRAMP 3PAO, third party assessment organization. There's a specific report that they have to conduct an assessment and fill out that report and really make a recommendation as to whether or not you are FedRAMP ready. Now, another player in the space is the FedRAMP Program Management Office, the FedRAMP PMO. They'll take that information, they will review it, they will ask some questions, ask for some clarification. And then once they've determined that, hey, everything in this report looks appropriate, we are going to give you the FedRAMP Ready designation because you are ready to undergo FedRAMP. Then you'll get on the marketplace as FedRAMP Ready.
One of the, and I say this softly out there, but one of the things about CMMC that was always a little confusing to me is it just felt like there was a lot of these, what you call them, three CPOs. Sweet.
Yeah.
Third party assessors.
3PAOs. Yep. CMMC 3PAOs.
Right. It's but anyways, inside of FedRAMP though, if I was doing my research correctly, it just doesn't seem like there's hardly any. And I felt like you were in there with a lot of big companies because DataLock, you guys are in there. That's one of the reasons I liked bringing you in talking about it, is because you guys are like an authority to a degree on the industry side. That's a very limited pool of people who can do that work.
Yeah, absolutely. So, to become a 3PAO, there are some ISO certifications you have to go under. There's a lot of training requirements. We have to send our folks to the Baltimore Cyber Range. There's quite a bit of things that have to be done, especially from a quality management standpoint, that have to be put in. So there are not that many organizations out there that have the ability to implement those things and have the expertise in-house when it comes to cloud security, when it comes to the compliance requirements of the federal government. So, I think there's about, I want to say 40 to 42 FedRAMP 3PAOs that are out there. So there are not that many organizations that can do these audits.
Yeah, no, that's really impressive from your guys' size. I mean, I know that you're very accomplished from a technical size, but you're still a small business.
Right.
Being in there, serving the needs of much larger organizations. Let's move into this this whole idea of I know we talked technically like where when do you need to be FedRAMP, et cetera, but like who should be thinking about getting FedRAMP ready or FedRAMP? By the way, is it FedRAMP certified is the last thing?
It's FedRAMP authorized.
FedRAMP. Okay, so who should be thinking about going that path where we're getting FedRAMP authorized? Is it only like Adobe from this big company, or is it us small businesses who might have solutions? Who should be thinking about that?
So I think it's both large organizations and small businesses. The large organizations, they have a lot of capabilities that they need to bring to the federal government, right? But small businesses are very innovative. Small businesses have a lot of solutions that our federal government really needs for them to be able to thrive, to keep up, and to really serve the American people. So it's really important that all businesses, whoever has an innovative solution, who thinks that a federal agency or multiple federal agencies might be able to benefit from that solution, really think about FedRAMP and think about exploring it. There's one thing that I do want to add a little bit outside of the FedRAMP discussion is FedRAMP really helps when it comes to security and putting security controls in place, right? So, even if you're not thinking about FedRAMP now, you're thinking about FedRAMP later, start looking at what these FedRAMP controls are, because a lot of them are, relatively straightforward, common sense, easy, basic controls that all organizations should be putting in place anyways to protect themselves, right? You're talking multi-factor authentication, we're talking about audit logging and things like that.
No, that's a really good point. It's I don't know why I'm having a feedback loop there. The one of the big discussions about CMMC is people are kind of complaining about it. It's like, well, all we're doing is putting a little certification on top of what industry should have already been doing, at least for level 1, level 2, or whatever it is now.
Yeah.
And so that's really good advice of being able to look at a FedRAMP type tool and say, hey, this is how I can really make sure my tool is good to go, whether I get FedRAMP certified or delayed. This one of the things, Zyad, that I was looking at that just surprises me is when I look, like I feel like I hear about FedRAMP all the time. Oh, you got to be FedRAMP certified to get in with the government to sell stuff. But when I go in and look at the FedRAMP Marketplace, which theoretically is, everybody who's selling a product or a service on the cloud to the government, it seems like a fraction of what I would expect to see. Do you see that as well, or do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so a couple of things. So, FedRAMP has become a big hot topic. There was a requirement, it still is a requirement for federal agencies to adopt cloud solutions, right? It's called Cloud First. And so there's a lot more cloud adoption. The problem that we're having with FedRAMP in its current state right now is there are a lot of requirements and it's very resource intensive, right? You've got the FedRAMP PMO. They have hundreds of packages that they have to review because ultimately they've got to make sure that everything meets the requirements to be put on the marketplace, right? And that organizations actually deserve to be on the marketplace and that they have everything in place. And so there's a lot of resource constraints that are there right now. To the FedRAMP PMO's credit, they've recently come out with a new roadmap trying to help streamline that process. So I'm very hopeful that in the next few years, it's going to be a little bit easier and a little bit quicker, and we're going to get a lot more product out there because ultimately, the federal agencies really need some of these solutions so that they can efficiently, carry out their mission.
Yeah, I feel like some of them use some of these solutions without the FedRAMP, but they're still using it. I'm like, come on, man. It's like you can't have a policy or rule in place and then don't do it.
Well, they are trying to work on that. They really want to encourage federal agencies to, go through the FedRAMP process and get these cloud service providers FedRAMP authorized because, ultimately they don't want them to just use it just for that agency. It would be great if they can use that solution at multiple agencies. It's a win-win for both organizations, right? It's a win-win for the government. It's a win-win for, the cloud service provider. They're going to do business with multiple organizations.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. By the way, it was interesting you saying cloud first because I've been in this long enough that I was around when the cloud came around, and I remember cloud first, and then I remember like it took a year or two. They went, "How about cloud smart instead of cloud?" Because a lot of us just rushed in. We're like, "I'll take 2 clouds or something." No, slow down. As somebody asked the question, I generally don't look at chat, but I happen to catch it on the side of my eye, and this is a really good question about just. For small businesses, right? CMMC is the same problem, but for small businesses, it's really expensive to do a lot of things. And you know this firsthand. You are a small business owner in the federal market who's open to teaming, by the way, if anybody wants to team with them. But the little plug for you there.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. But what can small businesses do if they're trying to go the FedRAMP route to try to streamline the cost or be, handle that more efficiently, most importantly, reduce the cost on it?
Yeah, so there's 2 things that I recommend, right? First and foremost, if you already have an established relationship with a federal agency and with a buyer, it doesn't hurt to ask them, hey, we need to go through FedRAMP to support you guys. Is this something that you guys can help pay for? I've seen organizations pay cloud service providers and help them achieve, FedRAMP authorization. It is very cost intensive. The other thing that I recommend, and I think this is really important, a lot of times these small businesses and these cloud service providers, they're going to go and they're going to look at some of the bigger names in the space, right? These bigger names have bigger overhead costs. They're going to charge a lot more, whether it be for assessment, advisory services, engineering services. Take a look at other providers in this space and look to team up with a small business. From one small business to another, your business is more important to me, right? And I can probably provide you with more cost-effective services than some of the larger players in the space.
No, it's a really good point. It's like I talk about this all the time. We small businesses need to help each other. There is so much money that is being spent in the federal government. Every one of us can be a very successful business. It doesn't have to be a competition. And I like that idea. I mean, I say that all the time from a sales perspective. is instead of knocking on a large door to try to get a subcontract or something, knock on a small, because if they knocked on your door, you know what it's like to be a small business. You appreciate the teaming and the value. So I appreciate you sharing that. Let me just ask you really quick, and we got 5 minutes left, which is a long time in a chat. But when you think about from the government's perspective, I'm in sales, so I always think with them or value prop. But what's in it for me from the other person's perspective when I'm talking to them, so I can provide value first and then look for something? What's the value beyond this? Well, maybe it is the security thing, but why is this important to the government? And maybe on the flip side of that, why isn't it that important to them?
Yeah, so it should be very important to them, right? I mean, at the end of the day, they could be giving very sensitive data to a cloud service provider to use that system. The last thing you're going to want to hear about is how, some of that sensitive data has been breached, has been leaked, etc. Right? And so it's really important that they work with these cloud providers to help them get through the process, to help them secure their systems, right? At the end of the day, the last thing that an organization is going to want is to have to be reactive to a breach. If we could just be a little bit proactive, protect our data, protect some of these innovative systems, make sure that these systems are secured for other agencies for them to be able to use as well, everybody's going to come out on top on that.
No, and that makes sense. It's funny. It's kind of like records management I used to do, and it's the law. It's necessary. It's important, but sometimes it gets pushed to the side. Yep. It's like no one's here. Well, with records management, it is not, and to my opinion, it's not as high risk as the cyber risks that are out there. So let me ask you kind of last question here, maybe. And by the way, my job today is to just make sure those of you who are out there, if you're interested, you're able to follow up with Zyad and learn more about FedRAMP or get his advice on different things. You can connect with him. But from a high level, if I was thinking about just even the time commitment of activities, what are like the top 5 or 6 steps in the process to getting FedRAMP or authorized? Yeah,
I'll try to make it less than 3 minutes, but there are about 6 phases that we always talk about.
Sure.
Okay? You want to prepare and you want to categorize the information that's being processed, stored, and transmitted. The organization has to be prepared and understand the commitment, whether it be human resources or capital that it's going to be required to get to FedRAMP authorized. Right. From there, you want to understand what controls have to be implemented. Consider doing a gap analysis. Then you're going to want to implement the security controls. It could be a complete re-architecture of your system. It could be that you just need to enhance some of your security controls. Once you do that, you need to identify a 3PAO assessment partner. And I say assessment partner, you want to be comfortable with the organization that you pick, the 3PAO that you pick, because it's for the long haul. It's year after year. So establish a great rapport with your 3PAO, work hand in hand with them, and help you get to the finish line, right? Obviously, as a 3PAO, we maintain our independence, right? But we want to make sure we understand your needs and we can help meet your needs while maintaining our independence. From there, you're going to work with your federal agency to help them authorize the system, review all of the information, review security assessment reports, and then grant an ATO. And then finally, your last step is to get through the PMO and do your continuous monitoring requirements, your annual assessments, your monthly vulnerability scans, et cetera, et cetera.
It's funny. Oh, you did very well in that time, but right. I can already see a question somebody's going to come ask you separately. Hey, can you help me get into the agency to find the person who will be my partner going to the FedRAMP? It's like, that's a whole separate kind of a conversation of finding that sponsor, if you will.
Exactly.
I really appreciate you coming out. I want to encourage everybody to follow up with you and DataLock and to learn more. What's the best way for people to reach you, to connect with you, and to learn more?
Yeah, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, of course. Otherwise, FedRAMP at DataLockCG.com would be a great place to start. Somebody from my team, if not myself, will reach out to you and try to set up a conversation with you. So if you're interested in FedRAMP, you want to learn more, feel free to reach out.
No, that's perfect. And it was FedRAMPs at DataLock.com.
FedRAMP at DataLockCG.com.
CG. Okay.
Yep.
And I know that my team's going to put that link in right now into the chat.
Perfect.
I also liked your steps, by the way, because it almost gave me a blog to go right afterwards. Hey, Zyad said, here's the steps kind of thing. But again, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming out. And for everybody else, I just want you to remember that government contracting, it is not a secret. It's just a process, just like FedRAMP. I'll see you in the next training, everybody.